Who did your homework? So if you weren't here last week, that gives you a pass. Remember we looked at Gideon, and how many sons did Gideon have? 70 sons, that's right. And then I asked you to identify in the Bible who had the most children. Do you remember that? No. Well, that was Sunday. Yeah, so that was before. Yeah. So that must mean you must have to get in the Word of God and read it. I know that's hard for, and I know as I told you Sunday, that's hard to believe everything on the internet's not true. And I know some of y'all were like, "What?" I know that was a bold statement for me to make, wasn't it, Jerry? I know it. But I'm willing to do that for y'all. I love y'all enough to make those bold statements. So, actually, it's in 2 Chronicles. You don't have to turn. Chapter 11, verse 21. This is King Rehoboam. This was Solomon's son. She's not putting it up there. I'm just telling you here. Remember, Solomon had how many wives and concubines? 2 million. Yeah, he had 1,000 combined. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines, or vice versa. Well, it only says that he has one son. Now, that's all that the Bible records. But his son, Rehoboam, had actually 88 children. He had 28 sons and 60 daughters. So you can read that and pick that up. So he didn't have as many wives as his father did, but he had a number. So, and of course we know that God took the kingdom from him, or he took the northern tribes from him because of his stubbornness, but ultimately it was because of Solomon's disobedience. But so that's your, and I went out and saw Brother Fred today, and I didn't even ask him that. I should have. I bet I could have stumped him on that one today. He'd have been. He's pretty sharp, but he would have stumped me with one back. So he probably would have done that. But so we're actually in the book of Judges, chapter 9, and we're actually going to start with verse number 7, Teresa. So if you remember last week, and again, we probably won't get to the root directive that this is going to bring out tonight. But for all of us, we see wickedness, we see evil and other things that happen on a daily basis. And a lot of times we think, and a lot of times those people that do those things think that they get away with it. And we're going to see here tonight is, it appears that this, who was Gideon's son, Amalek, and remember, what did he do to his other 68 brothers? He killed them. That's exactly right. And he was appointed actually the first king, if you would, because they anointed him as king over Israel at that point in time. And, you know, things look like that they're going well for him, and everything is going well for those people that conspired with him. And you think, man, how do they get away with stuff like that? But we're going to see here at the end that God is a just God. And God's justice will be given at the right time, at the right point. So I want to encourage you, don't get discouraged, because sometimes people think that they're getting away with things and they're mocking God and mocking the church. God doesn't miss dotting an I and crossing T, folks. There is coming a time for justice to come. So we're to stay the course, continue to walk separately, to walk holy in our walk towards God, and to know that God knows, even though sometimes, and when I probably next week get to you, I've got an example that I use in my own life, and this guy, I mean, it appeared that, you know, they called the mobster the Teflon Don. This guy, I knew, he seemed to get off with everything, and you knew he was as guilty could be. But I'll tell you about how, unfortunately, God dealt with that as we get into next week. But remember, there was one son that had remained, and his name was Jotham. And Jotham, in turn, comes, and he uses a parable here. And we know that Jesus taught a lot in parables. And he's going to utilize trees. And, of course, the culture of that day would have understood trees. They would have understood the importance of trees that had value. And then he's going to use one tree that's really nothing more than thorns and briars. And really, thorns and briars, they can't do anything, and he's going to analogize that the one that they've appointed as king is really nothing more than briars and thorns, and he's not of any value except for himself. So that's where we begin in verse number 7. It says, "Now when they told Jotham, he went and stood on a mountain at Mount Gizim." And Mount Gizim is actually where Moses received from God. Remember, as the Jewish people were transitioning to the Promised Land, God gave them a period where He said, if you will do these things, I will bless you. And then if you don't do these things, I will curse you. That's where that actually occurred at. And it says, and he lifted his voice and he cried out and he said to them. Now he's talking to the men of Shechem, again, because they're the one that gave money to the kind of the scoundrels of that town, and they, with Amalek, went and killed the other 68 brothers. So he says, listen to me, you men of Shechem, that God may listen to you. He said, the trees once went forth to anoint a king over them. And they said to the olive tree, reign over us. But the olive tree said to them, should I cease giving my oil? Now, we know again in Israel that olives were a very part of their culture and the importance of that. And an olive tree's perspective was to produce olives, which would produce olive oil. And it says, well, I don't want to be your king because I want to keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing, with which they honor God and men and go and sway over trees. Then the tree said to the fig tree, you come and reign over us. But the fig tree said to them, should I cease my sweetness and my good fruit and go and sway over trees? So again, it's saying, that's not my role. My role is to produce figs. Because ultimately, again, where has Amalek taken true kingship away from? God. Remember, God, because see, the others that have served, they have served as judges and have served as servants. Amalek is serving now as king, and I'm the man. So then it says, then the tree said to the vine, you come and reign over us. But the vine said to them, should I cease my new wine, which cherishes both men and God, and go sway over trees? So again, that's not my role. My role is to produce the wine, the grapes, if you would. Then it says, then all the trees said to the bramble. Now again, the bramble would be thorns. You come and reign over us. So to think about that, they started kind of at high place, if you would, with the olive, went to the fig, and then went to the grape, if you would. So now what are they willing to do? Okay, so if they're willing to lower themselves down to the thorns, what are they willing to do? Well, they're willing to compromise, aren't they? They're willing to take what they can get versus receiving the best from God. And aren't we like that as well, that we will begin to compromise? Because we should have our focus on God, but when God doesn't do things exactly the way we want Him to do, then we begin to ask other things to fulfill that role, and then finally we'll even get down, think about this, as far as being the king over the trees, they're going to let thorns be king. They have more value than the thorns do, but they're willing to allow the thorns to rule over them. You come and reign over us. And the bramble said to the trees, if in truth you anoint me as king over you, then come and take shelter under my shade. Now wait a minute. What's he just told them right there? If you anoint me, then you can come and take shelter under my shade. What's wrong with that statement? He don't have any shade. He don't have any shade. So he's telling them a lie, but yet they're going to believe that lie and say, okay, well, the brambles is able to cover us. Don't we, unfortunately, believe a lie as well? Yes. But if not, let fire come out of the bramble and to devour the cedars of Lebanon. What he's saying here is this, well, if you anoint me king and you don't like what I'm doing, then I'm going to come out and I'm going to destroy you. So think about this. One, he can't provide the shade that they need, and in turn, it's not about being a good leader, it's about what he can get, and if they don't agree to what he wants, then he's going to bring retribution against them. Now, how would you like to be led by someone like that? But that's what they have done. He's using that parable to say, okay, you had these truly good men, these sons of Gideon that could have led you appropriately, but you chose the worst of the worst. And because of that, he's not going to be able to lead you. And when you try to go against his authority, he's going to bring destruction upon you. So he is giving them a prophetic word right here. Now, how is that prophetic for us today? So we need to know who leads us, right? Not, first and foremost, who should always be our leader? God. But then when we get in the political realm as well, we need to understand that the decisions that we make, if we don't choose wisely according to the Word of God, will bring retribution to us for our decisions. And it's hard to believe, but this time next year, it'll be that time again. So it says in verse 16, now therefore, if you have acted in truth and sincerity in making Amalek king, and he's really saying this sarcastically, you didn't act in sincerity and truth, you wanted it because it would be best for you, with Jerubbaal, and that's Gideon and his house, and have done to him as he deserves. For my father fought for you, he risked his life and delivered you out of the hands of the Midians. But you have risen up against my father's house this day, killed his 70 sons on one stone, and made Amalek the son of his female servant. Remember again, his mother was actually a non-Jewish person. So again, Gideon had married and the king over the men of Shechem, because he's your brother. If then you have acted in truth and sincerity with Jerubbaal and with his house this day, then rejoice in Amalek, and let him also rejoice in you. But not let fire come from Amalek and devour the sons of Shechem and Beth Millah. And let fire come from the men of Shechem from Beth Millah and devour Amalek. And Jotham ran away and fled, and he went to Beer and dwelt there for the fear of Amalek his brother. So what has he just proclaimed upon his brother and the men of Shechem? Destruction on both of them. Listen, what he's saying is that one would destroy the other. Now, I thought they were partners. How many of you have seen... what happens when bad people become partners? Not good. But then what do a lot of times happen when bad people are partners? What do they do on themselves? They'll turn... because, again... So now this is where I want to get to. So, this has happened... Amalek has been ruling, and it says after Amalek had reigned over Israel 3 years. So now think about this. 3 years have gone by. Now, is 3 years a long period of time, short period? But it's still a period of time. God did not bring justice the next day, did He? Why not? Why does God not act that way? So again, His timing, because His timing... We only see a portion of what that might impact, because when it works in His timing, there are numerous other things that are impacted that we may never see or never understand. All we see is our little part of the corner right there. So 3 years have gone by. Now, if you're Amalek, and it says he's reigning, that means he's in control. How do you think he's looking at things now? Man, I got to get... I'm not... All that stuff, those 68 brothers that I cut their heads off, no big deal. I got away with it. Men in Shechem, no big deal. But then it says in verse 23, God sent a spirit of ill will between Amalek and the men of Shechem. God sent a spirit of ill will. What does that tell us right there? God will use whatever means He needs to, and God can use a spirit of illness, not physical illness, but where they had a conflict with one another. Do you know God will use any means that He has to and needs to? So don't put God, think about this. God has sent us, and as we get on over, it says that God will send remember what spirit He sends to Saul? That'll be, we'll get to that. He says He removes His spirit and He gives Saul so God is the one that put the conflict there. Dealt treacherously with Amalek, that the crime done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might be settled, and their blood be laid on Amalek their brother, who killed them, and on the men of Shechem, who aided in the killing of his brothers. So in turn, what the men of Shechem are trying to do is this. They're trying to pass the buck. They're saying, okay, Amalek, you were the one that completely are responsible and guilty of the murder of your brothers. Now, that's something that we have to definitely be aware of, even in our own walk today, is people will pass the buck. Or what's the old saying? They will throw you under the bus. So in turn, what they're saying here is this: we're going to say that we're guiltless, but you in turn are guilty of all. Were they guiltless? No. But they were trying to... Now, I want to ask you, I want you to be honest, I want you to be good. Have you ever passed the buck? Yes, I think we probably all have done that. That's unfortunately a part of our human nature, our sin nature. We shouldn't. And again, as we're a child of God, the Holy Spirit should say no. We should be accountable for our actions. And I would say that as we were talking yesterday, one of the greatest challenges that our young people today have is this: they make decisions not thinking that there are any consequences to the decisions in which they make. So understanding that the decisions that we make even as adults, there are consequences to that. So it says, and the men of Shechem set men in ambush against him on the tops of the mountains, and they robbed all who passed by them along that way, and it was told to Amalek. So what they're doing is they're setting up a group outside the city, and if anybody comes in, especially of Amalek's men, they're going to jump on them. But the other piece of that is this: the people that are coming into the city, they're robbing them. Now, why would that be an impact to Amalek? So now when they come into the city, they don't have any money, and he's getting a percentage of that money. So they begin to hurt him in his pocketbook. And so it says, now Gaal, the son of Ebed, came with his brothers and went over to Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their confidence in him. So their confidence has gone from one bad guy, and they put their confidence in another bad guy. Do we have, unfortunately, some times in our lives where it seems like we keep putting our confidence in the wrong person or the wrong thing? Where is the only place that we should put our confidence to understand that our confidence will never change? That's in the rock. That's in the rock. That's exactly right. So they were kind of wishy-washy about that. It says, so they went out into the fields and gathered grapes from the vineyards and trod them and made merry. And they went into the house of their God. So again, you can see that Amalek has allowed other gods to be in that city, and ate and drank, and they cursed Amalek. Then Gaal, the son of Ebed, said, who is Amalek? Now, why do you think he's getting boastful here? What'd you say, Robin? Because, so again, that's important right there. See, he went in there and it says he ate and they got drunk. And I challenge people to understand that, you get what they call that liquid courage. And when you get that liquid courage, it makes you make decisions that in turn are not very good decisions. So I would challenge any that would say, well, drinking's not going to get you into hell. No, it's not, but it will cause you to get drunk and potentially make decisions that in turn will have negative impact upon you. So again, it caused him to get very brave right here. We need to start turning that around and go, tell me of a time that alcohol helped the situation. That's exactly right. It never happens. That's right. That's why the Word of God says that we're to be drunk, not with wine, but with the Holy Spirit. It's exactly right in that standpoint. So he saw that. So it says Amalek. Who is this Amalek? And who is Shechem that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal and of Zebul, his officer? Serve the men of Hermon, the father of Shechem. But why should we serve him? If only these people were under my authority, then I would remove Amalek. So he said to Amalek, increase your army and come out. So he's gotten pretty brave at it. He said, man, I'm ready to go. Now he has no idea what Amalek has, does he? He's out there just running off at the mouth. But it then says when Zebul, the ruler of the city, that would be like the city manager, heard the words of Gazel, the son of Ebed, his anger was aroused because, see, him and Amalek were buddies because I imagine that there was probably some funds being transferred between the two. And he sent messengers to Amalek secretly saying, take note, Gael, the son of Ebed, and his brothers have come to Shechem and are here, and they're fortifying the city against you. So in turn, he thought that what he might be able to use as a surprise has actually been found out and has been given to the one he's going to potentially have to face. What does that also tell us there? Because he has been verbally running his mouth, he has already put himself in a strategic downplay because of his allowing that information that potentially would have been valuable to him. Because, see, sometimes when we speak, unfortunately, if we allow alcohol, we forget what we say. And we don't realize, so he's going to be walking into a trap which he thinks is a trap. So it says, now therefore get up by night, you and the people who are with you, and lie in wait in the field. And it shall be as soon as the sun is up in the morning that you shall rise early, rush upon the city, and when he and the people who are with him come out against you, that you may go to them as you find opportunity. Which is saying this, Amalek, you set a trap for them. When you see them and the people that enter the city, you bring it to them. So Amalek and all the people who were with him rose by night and lay in wait against Shechem in 4 companies. When Gael, the son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entrance to the city gate. Now again, he's had a night of where he's gone out and he's thinking everything is good. In the entrance of the city, and Amalek and the people who were with him rose from lying in wait. And when Gael saw the people, he said to Zebulun, look, people are coming down from the tops of the mountain. And he thought, well, man, these are some good people. They're coming into the city to bring us some money. But then the city manager, but Zebul said to him, you see the shadows of the mountain if they were in men. So Gazel spoke again and said, see, the people are coming down from the center of the land, and another company is coming from the diviners to the tree. Then Zebulun said to him, where indeed is your mouth now with which you said? And he says, look, I believe you know who these guys are now. Let's see if your actions can back up your mouth. That's really kind of what he put it. Are you not these people whom you despised? Go out, if you will, and fight with them now. So it says, so Gael went out, leading the men of Shechem, and fought with Amalek. And Amalek chased him, and he fled him, and many fell wounded to the very entrance of the gate. Then Amalek dwelt at Armash, and Zebulun drove out Zael and his brothers, so they would not dwell in Shechem. So Amalek again comes in, and he takes control back of the city. Now, think about that. I thought he's actually the worst of the worst, isn't he? But things are still going well for him. And it came about on the next day that the people went out into the field, and they told Amalek. So he took the people, divided them in 3 companies, and he lay wait in the field, and he looked, and there were people coming out of the city and arose against them and attacked them. Then Amalek and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood at the entrance of the gate of the city. And the other companies rushed up upon those who were in the field and killed them. So Amalek fought against the city all the day. He took the city and killed the people who were in it, and he demolished the city, and he sowed it with salt. So it looks like, again, everything that Amalek's doing is, so he's regained everything. And he's even killed some of the people in the city. But now it says this. Now, when all the men of the Tower of Shechem had heard that, they entered the stronghold of the temple of their god. Serena, how would you say that? Berith. And it was told to Amalek that all the men of the Tower of Shechem were gathered together. Then Amalek went up to Mount Zalmon, he and all the people who were with him. So what's happened here is this. There was a tower in Shechem. And this tower would have been what they would have used to look out and see the things. And all the men, now, who would be included in all the men? The men who had given him the money so that he could hire those guys to kill his brothers. So now all the men are in that tower and they're locked in. So let's see what Amalek says here I'm going to do to them. He says, and Amalek took an axe in his hand and cut down a briar bush from the trees and took it and laid it on his shoulders. Then he said to the people who were with him, what you have seen me do, make haste and do it, as I have done. So we see here that what does he do here at least? As a leader, he does it first. He says, he goes out and actually what he's doing is he's taking some wood. He's taking some, because he's getting ready to set this place on fire. He's taking stuff and he says, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm the leader. I'm not willing not to, I'm going to get my hands dirty. And he says, I want you to do the same. So those 4 companies that are with him, he's saying, pick up the sticks that you can get and lay them on your shoulders because we're getting ready to go have a big roast. So each of the people likewise cut down their own branch and followed Amalek, put them against the stronghold, and set the stronghold on fire above them. So that all the people of the town of Shechem died, about 1,000 men and women. So what does he do here? Those men and women that are in that tower, they put wood around it and they light it up. So who has been repaid for their treachery against the family of Gideon? Right here. No, not his family. The men of Shechem, remember, they're the ones that gave him the money to do that. So what has God just done right here? God has brought justice to those men that did the giving the approval and the finances for Amalek to kill those 68 sons. 3 years later, but in turn, God brought about justice by that one which they thought that they could trust. Goes back to that parable, doesn't it? Remember, if you don't do what I'm going to do, then I'm going to burn the cedars of Lebanon. So again, prophetically here, those men thought that they had gotten away with scot-free. They were trying to distance themselves. God brought about His justice right here. And I'm going to tell you, I don't believe there's any worse way to die than to burn to death. I don't believe, that's my opinion, but so God has brought His justice, yet who hadn't been dealt with yet? Okay, so it says, then Amalek went to Thebes and encamped against Thebes and took it. But there was a strong tower in the city, and all the men and women and all the people of the city fled there and shut themselves in. And they went up to the top of the tower. So Amalek's thinking, man, this next city, I've got them just like I had in Shechem. They've all gone up into the tower, and what am I going to do? I'm going to go have my guys, and they're going to come out, and we're going to put wood around it, and we're going to burn them up too. So Amalek came as far as the tower and fought against it. He drew near to the door of the tower to burn it with fire. But a certain woman, not even named in the Bible, just a certain woman, dropped an upper millstone on Amalek's head, and it crushed his skull.
That was about as bad as they could have got for a non-warrior to do.
So,
Be a woman and do that.
so he's moving into the tower just like he has done at Shechem, thinking that, man, I've got it under control. I know how to do it. This is not my first rodeo with burning down a tower. And as soon as he gets close enough, it doesn't say again if she, more than likely it just came out. But who divinely had it through gravity to hit at the right time at the right place? God did. Because what has God just brought about here for Amalek? Justice. And as Jerry stated, in the most disrespectful and discouraging way that it could happen, that a woman has killed. And that's a man, and that's what he's going to be remembered as. So, it says here, then he called quickly, so it didn't kill him, his armor bearer, and said to him, draw your sword and kill me, lest men say of me, a woman killed me. So the young man thrust his through, and he died. And when the men of Israel saw that Amalek was dead, they departed, every man to his place. And this is really what I wanted to get to, and I know that was, thus God repaid the wickedness of Amalek, which he had done to his father by killing his 70 brothers. And all the evil of the men of Shechem God returned on their own heads, and on them came the curse of Jotham, the son of Jebel. So in turn, we see here that if you didn't get anything else, hear this. What did the Word of God said? That God repaid. That means that God's justice came about. So don't get discouraged when we see people that it seems like, it seems like they get away with everything. And I'll give you quickly the example, and then I was a young man that I knew growing up, and he was if you just saw him, you would think that he was a really good guy. But in reality, he was a really bad guy and did a lot of things that he shouldn't do. And one of the things that he was known for doing was breaking and entering into people's houses. They had him a couple of times dead to right. One time they caught him, actually, he was on the tractor that he stole. It was on the news that they had him and he was on the tractor and they pulled him over. Continuously got off. And you knew and you knew and you knew. And the other thought was, well, maybe he's an informant. But that wasn't the reality. And he was a bully. That was the other thing. He would pick on people, and he had a home, and home butted up to another home, and he and his neighbor had some words, and he had two little lackeys, is what I called them, and they liked to follow him and they wanted to be him, unfortunately. They didn't have a good home life, and they wanted to be him, so the bigger boy and the father get into a fight in the backyard. And this guy's name was Ashley. And Ashley was known to carry a little .25 pistol in his back pocket. And he's running around and laughing, and he would shoot in the ground as they're fighting. And again, like I say, he's gotten off for things for many years. And father had a 16-year-old son that heard the shooting, thought that those guys were trying to kill his dad. 12-gauge shotgun at the door. Son runs outside, and he actually wasn't shooting at anybody, he just shot. Had bird shot in that shell. There was one pellet. And it said that when Ashley moved, that pellet hit him right here in the chest. Penetrated his heart, and he died right then. And I think about that, and but what breaks my heart is this, is that when he woke up, I know where he woke up at. And it wasn't with the Lord. But that was a lesson to me to realize that, you think that all this, but there is a reckoning, folks. And you don't want that reckoning to happen outside of a right relationship with God. But I want to tell us that we see what's going on in the world today and all that's happening today. God will bring justice to each and every situation there. So I encourage you to be strengthened and understand that God is still sovereign and in control of all things. And it will happen within His time frame. Okay? All right. All right, I need to call the church into its monthly business meeting. Can I get a motion to move into, so Tracy